Part 1. Ethan Carter was not the kind of person who stood out in a crowd. He wasn't the tallest, the smartest, or the funniest. In fact, most people at his high school in Ohio barely noticed him unless they sat next to him in class. Everything changed. For better or worse, he wasn't sure yet. It all started with an email. Not just any email, but one that made Ethan's heart race so fast he thought it might burst out of his chest. The subject line read, "Congratulations. You have been selected for the Intergalactic Student Exchange Program." At first, Ethan thought it was a joke. Maybe his friends had hacked into his account again, or perhaps someone from another school was playing a prank. But when he clicked on the email and saw the official seal of the Galactic Council of Education, his jaw dropped. The email explained that Ethan had been chosen to represent Earth in an exchange program. It's unlike anything humans had ever experienced. Before, students from different planets across the galaxy would come together to learn about each other's cultures, histories, and technologies. It sounded like something out of a science fiction movie, except this time, it was real. And somehow, Ethan, a regular kid from a small town, had been picked. For days, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about it. Should he go? What if he messed up and embarrassed humanity? On the other hand, how could he say no to such an incredible opportunity? After talking to his parents, who were both excited and terrified and getting approval from the school board, Ethan finally made up his mind. He would go. A few weeks later, Ethan found himself standing inside a sleek spaceship docked at a secret facility outside Cleveland. The ship looked nothing like the clunky rockets he'd seen in documentaries. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, and soft lights pulsed along its edges, giving it an almost alive appearance. A friendly alien crew member named Zik greeted him as he boarded. Zik was tall and thin, with skin that glowed faintly green and eyes that seemed too big for his face. Despite his strange appearance, Zik spoke perfect English and even cracked a few jokes to put Ethan at ease. As the ship lifted off, Ethan pressed his face against the window, watching Earth shrink until it became a tiny blue dot surrounded by endless blackness. For the first time in his life, he felt truly small. But he also felt a spark of excitement. This was his chance to prove himself, to show the universe that humans weren't just primitive creatures stuck on a rock in space, after what felt like hours but was actually several days thanks to faster-than-light travel. The ship arrived at its destination, Zoro 7. From the moment Ethan stepped onto the planet, he knew it was unlike anything he'd ever imagined. The sky was a deep shade of purple, dotted with 3 suns that cast strange shadows across the landscape. Plants grew in spirals instead of straight lines, and rivers flowed uphill, defying gravity. The air smelled sweet, like flowers mixed with vanilla. Zik escorted Ethan to the academy, where he would spend the next semester. It was a massive structure built into the side of a mountain, its walls covered in glowing runes that shifted colors depending on the time of day. Inside, the halls buzzed with activity. Students of all shapes and sizes hurried past, speaking in languages Ethan couldn't understand. Some looked vaguely human, while others were completely alien. There were beings with wings, tentacles, scales, and even ones that floated without legs. Ethan's first class was Introduction to Galactic Cultures, taught by Professor Xanath, a wise-looking creature with 6 arms and a voice that sounded like wind chimes. As Ethan took his seat, he noticed his classmates staring at him. One of them, a blue-skinned humanoid named Kale, leaned over and whispered, "So you're the human?" Ethan nodded nervously. "Didn't know your species still existed." Kale added with a grin, though Ethan couldn't tell if he was joking. Another classmate, floating orb-like being named Lyra, hovered closer and emitted a series of flashing colors. Ethan had no idea what the colors meant, but based on the giggles from nearby students, he guessed it was some sort of greeting. Then there was Varnock, a towering insectoid figure with sharp mandibles and multiple limbs. Varnock stared at Ethan, with unblinking eyes, making him feel like a bug under a microscope. Despite their differences, Ethan tried to focus on the lesson. Professor Xanath began by discussing the history of interstellar diplomacy, highlighting key moments when different species had come together or clashed. When it was time for introductions, Ethan stood up and gave a short speech about Earth. He talked about its oceans, its mountains and forests, as well as its diverse cultures and achievements. His classmates listened politely, nodding occasionally, but then came the questions. "What is your dominant predator?" asked a lizard-like student named Torque. I guess sharks," Ethan replied uncertainly. "And your dominant herbivore?" "Well, elephants are pretty big." Torque tilted his head. "Elephants? Are they dangerous?" "Not usually," Ethan said. "They're mostly peaceful and less provoked." He went on to describe lions, tigers, and bears, which earned murmurs of approval from his classmates. They seemed fascinated by Earth's wildlife, asking detailed questions about habitats and behaviors. Encouraged by their interest, Ethan decided to share one last fact. "You know," said with a smile, "the deadliest land mammal isn't a lion or a tiger. It's actually the hippopotamus." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Ethan, and the atmosphere shifted. Kale stopped smiling. Lyra's colors dimmed. Even Varnak froze mid-gesture. Ethan suddenly felt like he'd said something terribly wrong, though he had no idea what. "Did I say something weird?" he asked hesitantly. No one answered. Instead, his classmates exchanged uneasy glances before quickly changing the subject. Confused but unwilling to press the issue, Ethan sat back down. Little did he know. This was just the beginning of a much bigger mystery, one that would challenge everything. He thought he knew about aliens, Earth, and himself. Part to the strange silence that followed. Ethan's mention of the word hippopotamus lingered long after the class ended. As students filed out of the room, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled into something far bigger than he understood. He tried to brush it off, telling himself it was probably just a cultural misunderstanding. After all, Earth and Zorth 7 were galaxies. Apart, what did he know about alien customs or taboos? Still, the reaction gnawed at Ethan. Decided to seek answers. The first person he approached was Mia Rodriguez. Another human student who had been part of the exchange program for nearly 6 months. Mia was from Canada, with curly brown hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She had already earned a reputation among the alien students as someone who could navigate the complexities of interstellar life without breaking a sweat. If anyone could explain what had happened in class, it was her. Mia was sitting in the academy's common area when Ethan found her. The space was filled with soft glowing plants that emitted a faint hum, creating an almost meditative atmosphere. Alien students lounged on floating cushions or chatted quietly while holographic screens displayed news feeds from across the galaxy. Ethan slid onto the cushion next to Mia and cleared his throat. "Hey, Mia," he began hesitantly. "Can I ask you something?" Mia glanced up from the tablet she was reading and raised an eyebrow. "Sure. What's up?" "Well," Ethan hesitated, unsure how to phrase his question. "Do you know why everyone got so weird when I mentioned hippos in class today?" Mia's expression changed instantly. Her eyes widened slightly, and she leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You talked about hippos, in front of everyone." "Yeah," Ethan said, feeling more confused by the second. "I just said they were the deadliest land mammals. It's true, right? I mean, they kill more people in Africa than lions do." Sighed and shook her head. "Ethan, you don't understand. Can't just go around saying stuff like that here." "Why not?" Ethan asked, his frustration growing. "It's just a fact. Are they scared of animals or something?" "It's not about being scared," Mia explained patiently. "Look, there's a reason I told you to stick to safe topics when you first got here. Some things on Earth are, well, let's just say they've taken on a life of their own in alien cultures." "What do you mean?" Ethan pressed. Mia hesitated, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Okay, here's the deal. A long time ago, before humans, even new aliens existed. Some early explorers visited Earth. They didn't stay long, but they picked up bits and pieces of our stories. Legends, myths, folklore, you name it. And somehow, tales about hippos got twisted into something way bigger than they actually are." Ethan frowned. "Twisted how?" "Think about it," Mia said. "When humans talk about hippos, we focus on how aggressive they can be, how unpredictable. But imagine hearing those stories through the lens of an alien culture. that doesn't have anything like them? To them, hippos aren't just dangerous, they're monsters. Giant, unstoppable. Beasts capable of wiping out entire civilizations. That's ridiculous, Ethan muttered, though doubt crept into his voice. They're just animals. Maybe, Mia admitted. But try explaining that to someone whose ancestors grew up hearing bedtime stories about hippo armies invading planets. Trust me, it's not worth the trouble. Ethan sat back, processing what Mia had said. Sounded absurd, but he couldn't deny the reaction he'd seen in class. His classmates hadn't just been surprised, they'd looked genuinely terrified. For the first time since arriving on Zorth 7, Ethan felt completely out of his depth. Back on Earth, facts were facts. Here, reality seemed to blur into myth, and he had no idea where the line was. Determined to learn more, Ethan spent the rest of the day observing his classmates. During lunch, he noticed Kale the blue-skinned humanoid, who had joked about humans. Earlier, sitting alone at a table, Ethan seized the opportunity to strike up a conversation. Hey, Kale, he said, sliding onto the bench across from him. Got a minute? Kale looked up, his bioluminescent markings flickering faintly. Oh, hey, Ethan, what's up? I wanted to apologize if I'd freaked anyone out earlier, Ethan began. About the whole hippo thing. I didn't realize. It was such a big deal. To his surprise, Kale chuckled nervously. It's okay. It's not your fault. We're just conditioned to react that way, I guess. Conditioned. Ah, Ethan echoed. What does that mean? Kale hesitated, glancing around the cafeteria to make sure no one was eavesdropping. Okay, look. When we were kids, we heard stories about Earth. About these massive creatures called hippos that could destroy cities and swallow ships whole. Teachers used them as cautionary tales to teach us about respecting other species. Over time, those stories became ingrained in our culture. Even now, hearing the word hippo makes most of us uneasy. But they're not like that at all, Ethan argued. They're mostly harmless unless you provoke them. I believe you, Kale said quickly. But old fears die hard. You should probably avoid mentioning them again for your second hours. Ethan nodded, though he wasn't entirely convinced. Something about the situation bothered him. Why should fear based on misinformation continue to hold so much power? Back home, ignorance could be challenged with education. Maybe the same principle. Applied here later that evening, Ethan found himself wandering the Academy's library, a sprawling chamber filled with holographic displays and interactive archives. Unlike Earth libraries, this one didn't have physical books. Instead, information was stored in glowing orbs that floated above pedestals. Students could summon data streams simply by touching the orbs or speaking commands aloud. Ethan approached a librarian named Zyra, a small bird-like creature with feathers that shimmered like oil slicks. Excuse me, he said. Do you have any records about early contact between humans and Zorothians? Zyra tilted her head curiously. Early contact? That's quite a specific request. May I ask why? I'm doing research for a project, Ethan lied smoothly. Cultural studies? Very well, Zyra chirped. She fluttered over to a nearby pedestal and tapped it with her wingtip. A hologram materialized above the surface, displaying a timeline of events. Ethan scanned the entries, searching for anything related to Earth. Eventually, he found what he was looking for. A brief account of a Zorothian expedition to Earth centuries ago. According to the records, the explorers had landed near a river in Africa where they encountered local tribes. Through rudimentary communication methods, the tribes shared stories about wildlife, including tales of hippos attacking boats and killing intruders. These accounts were recorded and brought back to Zorth 7, where they were exaggerated and embellished over generations. By the time modern Zorothians learned about hippos, the creatures had become legendary predators akin to dragons or sea serpents. As Ethan read through the details, a plan began to form in his mind. If fear stemmed from ignorance, then knowledge might be the antidote. He realized he couldn't undo centuries of myth overnight. But perhaps he could start by showing his classmates the truth about hippos. Maybe, just maybe, he could bridge the gap between fact and fiction. By the time Ethan left the library, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. For For the first time since arriving on Zorith 7, he had a goal, one that went beyond simply surviving the semester. He wanted to help his classmates see past their fears and understand Earth for what it truly was, a planet full of wonders. Yes, but also a place grounded in reality. Little did Ethan know, his decision to challenge the status quo would lead to both unexpected friendships and unforeseen challenges. But for now, he was content to take it one step at a time. Part 3 the next morning, Ethan woke up with a sense of determination he hadn't felt in weeks. He had spent half the night thinking about how to approach his classmates' fear of hippos. It wasn't just a matter of correcting misinformation. It was about building trust. If he could show them that Earth's wildlife, including hippos, wasn't as terrifying as their legends suggested, maybe he could help bridge the gap between their cultures. But where to start? Ethan decided to begin small. He sat at a table with Kale and Lyra, two of his more approachable classmates. Varnock, the towering insectoid figure, was nearby, but seemed too intimidating for such a delicate conversation. As Ethan picked at his food, a strange gelatinous substance that tasted like blueberries, he cleared his throat. "Hey, guys," he said casually, "can I ask you something?" Kale glanced up from his plate, his glowing markings flickering faintly. "Sure. What's on your mind?" "Well," Ethan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I've been thinking about what we talked about yesterday, about hippos." Lyra, the floating orb-like creature, emitted a series of flashing colors, reds and yellows that signaled caution. Kale's markings dimmed slightly, and he exchanged a wary look with Lyra. "Why are you bringing that up again?" Kale asked, his tone guarded. "I'm not trying to upset anyone," Ethan assured him quickly. I want to understand why it bothers people so much. And maybe, if you're okay with it, I'd like to share some real facts about hippos. You know, to clear things up." Kale frowned, clearly torn. On one hand, he seemed curious. On the other, the mere mention of hippos made him uneasy. Lyra pulsed brighter, her colors shifting to purple and green, signs of hesitation. "I don't know, Ethan," Kale admitted. "It's not just us. The whole academy is kind of sensitive about this topic. I don't think anyone would take it well. But isn't it better to face our fears than let them control us?" Ethan countered. "Back on Earth, we used to be scared of lots of things. Thunderstorms, wild animals, even the ocean. But once we learned more about them, the fear went away." Kale tilted his head thoughtfully. "Does that make sense, I guess? Still, you have to be careful. People here aren't used to hearing the truth about hippos. They've grown up believing they're these unstoppable monsters." "What if I could show you proof?" Ethan pressed. "Yeah, videos, pictures, scientific studies, all the stuff that proves hippos are just animals, not monsters."
Oh.
Lyra's colors shifted again, this time to a soft, encouraging blue. She floated closer to Ethan, her movements gentle and deliberate. Kale sighed, running a hand over his smooth blue forehead. "All right," he said finally, "but you'll need to do it privately. If word gets out that you're talking about hippos, there could be trouble." "Got it," Ethan replied, relief washing over him. "Thanks, Kale. Thanks, Lyra. This means a lot." Later that day, Ethan met up with Mia in the library to gather materials for his presentation. Together, they sifted through Earth's digital archives, pulling together videos of hippos swimming lazily in rivers, grazing peacefully in grasslands, and even playing with their young. They also included clips of hippos displaying aggressive behavior, charging boats, or defending their territory, but Ethan made sure to emphasize that these incidents were rare and usually provoked. "This is good," Mia said, reviewing the footage, "but you need to be careful how you present it. Don't downplay the danger completely. Just focus on showing that hippos aren't the mythical beasts everyone thinks they are." "Right," Ethan agreed. "I don't want to sugarcoat it. I just want to give them the full picture." As they worked, Mia shared a few tips based on her own experiences navigating alien culture. "You'll probably get pushback at first," she warned. "Some of them might refuse to listen. But if you stay calm and respectful, you'll win them over eventually." Ethan nodded, grateful for her advice. By the time they finished compiling the materials, felt ready, or at least as ready as he could be. That evening, Ethan invited Kale and Lyra to a private study room in the library. He set up a holographic projector and dimmed the lights, creating an intimate atmosphere. When his classmates arrived, they looked nervous but intrigued. "Okay," Ethan began, gesturing toward the blank screen behind him. "I know this might make you uncomfortable, but I promise it's worth it. Let me show you the real story about hippos." He started with gentle scenes, a mother hippo nursing her calf, a group of hippos lounging in shallow water, their massive bodies barely visible beneath the surface. The images were peaceful, almost serene. Kale relaxed visibly, while Lyra's colors softened to a tranquil shade of lavender. "These are hippos in their natural habitat," Ethan explained. "They spend most of their time in rivers and lakes because they need water to keep cool. They're actually pretty lazy unless something threatens them." Next, he showed videos of hippos interacting with humans, tourists snapping photos from boats, researchers observing them from a safe distance. "See, most of the time, they ignore us completely. We can coexist without any problems." Kale nodded slowly, his earlier tension easing. Lyra bobbed up and down, her colors now bright and cheerful. Encouraged by their reactions, Ethan moved on to the more challenging part of his presentation, footage of hippos charging boats or chasing predators away from their territory. "These moments are rare," Ethan said firmly, "and they usually happen when someone gets too close or tries to harm them. Hippos aren't mindless killers, they're just protecting themselves and their families." To his surprise, neither Kale nor Lyra reacted with fear. Instead, they seemed fascinated, asking questions about the animal's behavior and biology. For the first time, Ethan realized that curiosity might outweigh fear off, given the chance stopped by the end of the session. Both Kale and Lyra were smiling, or at least Kale was, and Lyra's colors had settled into a warm golden hue. "That was eye-opening," Kale admitted. "I never imagined hippos could be so normal." "They're still dangerous," Ethan reminded him, "but only under certain conditions. Like any wild animal, really." Lyra pulsed brightly, signaling agreement. "Thank you for sharing this," Kale added. "I think others might benefit from seeing it too, at least. Those who are open-minded enough." Ethan grinned, feeling a surge of hope. Maybe he couldn't change everyone's minds overnight, but this was a start. One step at a time, he was beginning to break down the walls of fear and misunderstanding. Over the next few days, Ethan continued his efforts, sharing his presentation with a handful of trusted classmates. Each time, he encountered a mix of reactions. Some were eager to learn, while others remained skeptical or outright resistant. But slowly, the tide began to turn. Word spread among the students that Ethan wasn't trying to dismiss their fears. He was offering a new perspective. One afternoon, as Ethan walked through the academy's halls, he noticed a group of aliens gathered around a holographic display. Curious, he approached and saw that they were watching one of the videos he had shown during his presentation. A lizard-like student named Torque turned to him, his forked tongue flicking nervously. "So, these are real?" Torque asked, pointing to the screen where a hippo was wading through water. "Yes," Ethan confirmed. "Just like I told you.
Out there.
Amazing creatures, but they're not monsters." Torque hesitated, then nodded slowly. Maybe we've been wrong about them." It was a small victory, but it meant everything to Ethan. For the first time since arriving on Zorath 7, he felt like he was making a difference, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. Little did he know, however, that his efforts were about to face their biggest test yet. Part 4, Ethan's newfound confidence didn't last long. Just as he began to feel like he was making progress, an unexpected challenge arose, one that would test everything he had worked for. It started with a simple announcement from Professor Xanath during their Galactic Cultures class. "Attention, students," the six-armed professor said, her chiming voice cutting through the chatter. "Next week, we will hold a cultural showcase. Each of you will present something unique about your home planet. This is your chance to share your heritage and educate your peers." The room buzzed with excitement. Some students immediately began whispering ideas to each other, while others scribbled notes on their tablets. Ethan, however, felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. He knew exactly what he wanted to present hippos, but after seeing how sensitive the topic was, he wasn't sure if it was the right choice. Would this be an opportunity to clear up misconceptions, or would it backfire spectacularly? After class, Ethan sought out Mia for advice. She was sitting in the common area again, surrounded by glowing plants and holographic displays. She frowned thoughtfully. It's risky, she admitted. But if you handle it carefully, it could work. Just focus on the facts like you did before. Maybe add some humor or lighter moments to keep things from getting too intense. Humor, Ethan echoed skeptically. I don't think anyone here finds hippos funny. Might if you frame it the right way, Mia countered. Show them how humans view hippos not as monsters, but as fascinating creatures with quirks and personalities that could help break the tension. Tone nodded slowly, considering her words. If he approached the presentation as a celebration of Earth's wildlife rather than a lecture, perhaps he could win over even the skeptics. But he'd need more than just videos and pictures this time. He needed something interactive, a way to engage his audience and make them see hippos in a new light. Over the next few days, Ethan threw himself into preparing his presentation. With Mia's help, he designed a virtual reality simulation that allowed users to experience life as a hippo. Participants could explore a riverbank, interact with other hippos, and even witness rare moments of aggression, all from the safety of a headset. The simulation included narration explaining the animal's behavior, along with fun facts about their diet, habitat, and social structure. Kale and Lyra volunteered to test the VR experience, offering feedback to ensure it struck the right balance between education and entertainment. Kale emerged from the simulation laughing, clutching his sides. That was incredible, he exclaimed. Did you know hippos can run faster than humans? I never would have guessed. Anna. In the part where they yawn to show their teeth, it's terrifying, but also kind of cute, Lyra added, colors flashing playfully. Encouraged by their reactions, Ethan finalized the presentation. On the day of the cultural showcase, he arrived early to set up his booth. The Academy's Grand Hall had been transformed into a vibrant marketplace of ideas, with each student displaying artifacts, performances, or demonstrations from their home planets. Alien students wandered from booth to booth, marveling at the diversity of cultures. When it was Ethan's turn to present, a small crowd gathered around him. He took a deep breath and smiled warmly. Welcome, everyone, he began. Today, I'm going to introduce you to one of Earth's most misunderstood creatures, the hippopotamus. A ripple of unease passed through the group, but Ethan pressed on. Now, I know some of you have heard scary stories about hippos. Let me assure you, they're not the monsters you've been led to believe. In fact, they're pretty amazing once you get to know them. He handed out VR headsets to a few volunteers, guiding them through the simulation. As they explored the virtual world, gasps of surprise and laughter filled the air. One student, a tentacled being named Zilra, removed her headset with wide eyes. Had no idea they were so graceful, she exclaimed. Others nodded in agreement, their initial fear giving way to curiosity. Ethan seized the moment to share additional insights, pointing out how hippos played a vital role in maintaining ecosystems by keeping waterways clear and spreading nutrients. By the end of the presentation, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. Students who had once recoiled at the mention of hippos now peppered Ethan with questions, eager to learn more. Even Varnock, the towering insectoid who rarely spoke, approached Ethan afterward. That was enlightening, Varnock rumbled, his mandibles clicking softly. Thank you for sharing this. Perhaps we have misjudged your planet's creatures. Ethan grinned, feeling a swell of pride. For the first time, he truly felt like he belonged, not just as a representative of Earth, but as a member of the Academy community. But the victory was short-lived. Later that evening, as Ethan reviewed feedback from his classmates, he received a message from Professor Xanath. It was brief and cryptic. Report to my office immediately. Confused, Ethan made his way to the professor's quarters, a quiet chamber adorned with floating crystals that emitted soft melodic tones. Xanath sat behind a desk made of translucent material, her 6 arms folded neatly in front of her. Ethan, she began, her voice calm but serious. Your presentation today was impressive. However, I must warn you that not everyone shares your classmates' enthusiasm. What do you mean? Ethan asked, his heart sinking. There are factions within the Academy and beyond who cling to the old legends about hippos. They see your efforts to debunk those myths as a threat to our cultural identity. Be prepared for resistance. Ethan swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling over him. He had hoped to change minds peacefully, but now he realized that challenging deeply ingrained beliefs came with consequences. Still, he refused to back down. I understand, he said firmly, but I can't let fear control us. If I can help even one person see the truth, it'll be worth it. Xanath studied him for a moment, then nodded approvingly. Very well. Just remember, knowledge is a powerful tool, but it must be wielded wisely. Proceed with caution. Ethan left the office. He couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was brewing. His presentation had opened doors, but it had also stirred up tensions he hadn't anticipated. Little did he know, the real storm was yet to come. Part 5. The days following Ethan's presentation felt like walking on thin ice. At first, everything seemed fine. His classmates continued to ask questions about hippos, and a few even thanked him for helping them see the animals in a new light. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. Whispers followed Ethan down the halls, and some students avoided making eye contact with him altogether. Couldn't tell if they were impressed or angry, or maybe both. One afternoon, as Ethan sat in the Academy's cafeteria picking at his food, Kale approached him with an uneasy expression. His glowing markings flickered faintly, a sure sign that something was wrong. Hey, Ethan, Kale said, sliding onto the bench across from him. Can we talk? Sure, Ethan replied, setting down his fork. What's up? Lay glanced around the room, lowering his voice. There's been pushback. Some of the older students, and even a few teachers, are upset about your presentation. Ethan frowned. Why? I thought it went well. It did for most of us, Kale admitted. But not everyone sees it that way. There's a group called the Guardians of Zorathian Lore. They're obsessed with preserving our ancient stories, no matter how exaggerated they are. To them, what you did was disrespectful. Disrespectful, Ethan echoed, incredulous. I wasn't trying to insult anyone. I just wanted to share the truth. I know that, Kale said quickly, and so do a lot of others. But the Guardians don't care about facts. They care about tradition. They've already started spreading rumors that you're trying to erase our history. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. This is ridiculous. How can telling the truth be seen as erasing history? It's complicated, Kale admitted. For some people, those legends are all they have. They think if we question one myth, we'll start doubting everything else. It's scary for them. Ethan leaned back, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He'd come to Zora 7 hoping to make a difference, but now he wondered if he'd only made things worse. Still, he refused to give up. What should I do? He asked Kale. For now, lay low, Kale advised. Don't bring up hippos unless someone asks directly. Whatever you do, stay away from the Guardians. They're not known for being reasonable. Despite Kale's warning, Ethan found it hard to keep quiet. The more he thought about the Guardians' reaction, the angrier he became. Why should fear based on lies continue to hold so much power? Back on Earth, Progress came from questioning old beliefs, not clinging to them. Wasn't that how civilizations grew? Determined to stand his ground, Ethan decided to address the issue head-on. During a cultural studies class, Professor Xanath announced an open discussion session where students could share their thoughts on recent presentations. Ethan seized the opportunity. When it was his turn to speak, he stood up and faced the room. His classmates looked at him curiously, though a few shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "I know my presentation on hippos caused some controversy," Ethan began, his voice steady despite the nerves churning in his stomach. "And I understand why some people might feel threatened by what I shared. But here's the thing. Knowledge isn't meant to destroy, it's meant to build bridges." He paused, scanning the room. "Yes, your ancestors heard stories about hippos being monsters, but those stories were based on misunderstandings. We let fear control us. We miss out on the chance to learn and grow. Isn't that why we're all here to understand each other better?" The room fell silent. For a moment, Ethan worried he had gone too far. Then Lyra floated forward, her color shifting to a warm, encouraging blue. "He's right," she chimed in, her voice soft but clear. "Fear keeps us apart. Knowledge brings us together." A few other students nodded in agreement, but not everyone looked convinced. Varnock, the towering insectoid, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully before speaking. "It is easy to say these things," he rumbled. "But changing beliefs takes time. You cannot expect everyone to accept this overnight." "I'm not asking for overnight change," Ethan replied. "I'm asking for openness, for a willingness to listen and learn. That's all." Before anyone could respond, the door to the classroom slid open, and a group of older students entered. They wore dark robes adorned with intricate patterns, their faces stern and unyielding. At their center was a tall, imposing figure named Jorana, senior student who served as the leader of the Guardians of Zerothian lore. "We heard there was talk of undermining our traditions," Joran declared, his voice cold and commanding. "Care to explain yourself, human?" Ethan swallowed hard but held his ground. "I'm not undermining anything. I'm sharing facts about Earth's wildlife. If your traditions are strong enough, they shouldn't crumble because of the truth." Joran's eyes narrowed. "Truth is subjective. What you call truth is an insult to centuries of storytelling. Do you think your planet's history is more important than ours?" "That's not what I'm saying," Ethan countered. "I'm saying history and truth can coexist. Legends don't lose their value just because we learn new things. In fact, they become richer when we understand them better." The room buzzed with murmurs as students debated Ethan's words. Some sided with him, while others backed the Guardians. Braun stepped closer, his presence looming over Ethan. "You tread dangerous ground," he warned. "Challenge us again, and you'll regret it." With that, the Guardians turned and left the room, their robes billowing behind them. The tension lingered long after they were gone, leaving Ethan shaken but resolute. Later that evening, Ethan confided in Mia about the confrontation. She listened quietly, her expression thoughtful. "You handled it well," she said finally. "But Joran's right about one thing: you're treading dangerous ground. The Guardians have influence here. Push too hard and you might find yourself in real trouble, I know," Ethan admitted. "But I can't back down. If I do, I'll be letting fear win, and that's not who I am." Mia smiled faintly. "Then we'll face this together. Just promise me one thing: be smart about it. Sometimes progress comes in small steps." Ethan nodded, grateful for her support. As he stared out the window at Zorath 7's purple sky, he realized the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But he also knew he couldn't turn back now. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them one step at a time. Part 6, the days that followed, were tense. Ethan could feel the weight of the Guardian's warning hanging over him like a storm cloud. Every time he entered a classroom or walked through the Academy's halls, he half expected to be confronted again. But strangely, nothing happened, at least not right away. The Guardians seemed content to let their presence linger in the background, a silent reminder of the line Ethan wasn't supposed to cross. Still, life at the Academy didn't stop. Classes continued, and Ethan tried to focus on his studies despite the unease gnawing at him. During one particularly quiet afternoon, he found himself sitting in the library with Kale and Lyra, working on a group project about interstellar trade routes. The topic was dry, but it gave them something else to think about besides hippos and guardians. "You know," Kale said suddenly, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking about what you said in class the other day." Ethan looked up from his notes, surprised. "What do you mean?" "About legends and truth coexisting," Kale explained. "It got me wondering. Maybe there's a way to honor our traditions while still learning new things." Lyra pulsed brightly, her colors shifting to a soft green. "Yes, like blending old stories with new facts. It doesn't have to be one or the other." Ethan smiled faintly. Oh, that's exactly what I was hoping for. But how do we make that happen when people like Joran are so set against it? Kale shrugged. "We start small. Maybe we can create something, a story, a presentation that shows both sides, something that respects the past, but also embraces the present." Ethan leaned forward, intrigued. "You're saying we rewrite the legend of the hippo?" "Not rewrite," Kale corrected. "Reimagine. Take the core of the old tale, the idea of a powerful, unpredictable creature, and combine it with what we now know about real hippos. Show how they're amazing without being monsters." Lyra bobbed enthusiastically. "It could work. And if we involve other students who are curious but scared, it might help bridge the gap." For the first time in days, Ethan felt hopeful. They could find a way to merge myth and reality. Maybe they could ease the tension between tradition and truth. Together, the three of them began brainstorming ideas, sketching out a plan that would mix storytelling with education. Over the next week, Ethan, Kale, and Lyra worked tirelessly on their project. They decided to create an interactive performance. It's a blend of theater and virtual reality that would take the audience on a journey through the evolution of the hippo legend. The story would begin with the exaggerated tales of ancient Zoroastrians, showing how fear shaped their perception of Earth's wildlife. Then, using Ethan's VR simulation, it would transition into a realistic portrayal of actual hippos, highlighting their behavior, habitat, and role in ecosystems to ensure the project resonated with their classmates. They recruited volunteers from different species and backgrounds. Some helped design costumes and props, while others contributed music or narration. Even Varnock, the towering insectoid who rarely participated in group activities, offered to build a mechanical hippo puppet for the performance. Slowly but surely, the project brought people together, creating a sense of unity that had been missing since the controversy began. As the final touches came together, Ethan couldn't help but feel proud of what they'd accomplished. It wasn't just about hippos anymore. It was about finding common ground and proving that progress didn't have to come at the expense of tradition. On the night of the performance, the Academy's grand hall buzzed with anticipation. Students and teachers filled the seats, their expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. The Guardians were conspicuously absent, though Ethan suspected they were watching from somewhere, waiting to see how this bold experiment would play out. When the lights dimmed and the curtains rose, the room fell silent. The stage was set to resemble an ancient Zoroastrian village, complete with glowing runes and flickering firelight. A narrator's voice echoed through the hall, recounting the legendary tale of the monstrous hippo army that once terrorized civilizations. Actors dressed as warriors acted out scenes of chaos and destruction, their movements dramatic and exaggerated. Just as the tension reached its peak, the scene shifted. The backdrop dissolved into a shimmering hologram of Earth's rivers and grasslands. Ethan stepped forward, wearing a headset connected to the VR simulation. He invited several volunteers from the audience to join him on stage. Guiding them through the virtual world of real hippos, gasps of surprise rippled through the crowd as participants described what they saw. Massive, yet gentle creatures wading through water, mothers caring for their young, and even playful moments where hippos splashed each other like oversized puppies. When the simulation ended, Ethan addressed the audience directly. "These are the true hippos," he said, his voice steady and clear. "They're not monsters. They're part of Earth's beauty. But that doesn't mean the old stories lose their value. Those legends taught your ancestors to respect nature, to understand that power exists in unexpected forms. By combining those lessons with what we know today, we can honor the past while embracing the future. The room erupted into applause. For a moment, Ethan thought he saw tears glistening in Lyra's orb-like surface, and Kale's glowing markings brightened with pride. Even Varnick clicked his mandibles approvingly, his mechanical hippo puppet swaying gently behind him. But as the cheers died down, Ethan noticed a figure standing near the back of the hall. It was Jorn, flanked by two other guardians. Their faces were unreadable, but their posture radiated disapproval. Without a word, they turned and left, their robes trailing behind them. Though the performance had been a success, Ethan knew the battle wasn't over. The guardians weren't going to give up that easily. Still, he took comfort in knowing he wasn't alone anymore. With friends like Kale, Lyra, and Varnick by his side, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead as the audience filed out of the hall. Congratulating the performers, Ethan stood quietly off to the side, watching the mingling students. For the first time since arriving on Zorth 7, he truly felt like he belonged, not because he had won everyone over, but because he had sparked a conversation that mattered. Whatever happened next, he knew he had made a difference.